Today I'm going to be talking about enduring confrontation maps and air realistic That just doesn't sound right. What is going on, everybody? I hope you're all having a fantastic day. We're going to be talking about enduring confrontation maps. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to like a video and leave a... That doesn't sound right either. Today I'm going to be talking about enduring confrontation maps and air realistic battles, otherwise known as EC maps. I'll probably just say EC throughout the rest of the video. Quick disclaimer, unfortunately for me, the video came out a little bit later than I wanted because I spent a little bit of time trying to play War Thunder actually and get some footage of these EC maps just for the background. I'm not going to be talking about any of the footage. In fact, you could just close the video, minimize it or whatever, and listen to it as a podcast if you'd want, because I'm not going to refer to anything in the video. But anyways, I got sidetracked. Back to the point I was making, I didn't actually get any EC maps throughout the entire time I was playing, so you could be seeing some old footage and also some footage of low tier jets, no top tier footage of an EC map. Now I am going to say a lot of my complaints that I'm going to throw out there in this video are oftentimes rebutted and addressed by special members of the community that think they have some pretty good ideas, and I would completely disagree with most of their ideas that would quote unquote fix these issues, and I'm going to address some of the more popular rebuttals later on in the video, but I just want to get the main, points down first before we get into the counter arguments. The number one thing that I want to get out of the way of the video first is dealing with the low tier EC maps. And I'm talking about anywhere from 7.0 to 10.0 jets. I genuinely don't believe have any place on an EC map. They are simply too big, and it's completely unnecessary other than to waste your time. Many of these jets are subsonic, even up to battle rating 9.7. There's plenty of subsonic planes or planes that barely go supersonic. And that means that the size of these maps, you're oftentimes doing nothing for a much larger amount of time than you are actually playing the game. And I incredibly despise that. If I'm going to hop on a video game and I want to play it for a little while, I want to actually be playing the game. I don't want to be doing nothing with my thumb up my ass for a longer portion of time than I am actively being involved and contributing to the gameplay. This is the main reason why I'm not a fan of props. Though prop combat is pretty fun, I just can't stand the amount of doing nothingness that happens in between the combat. And when I'm playing these low tier jets on an EC map, it feels very much the same, and I honestly just leave the EC maps anytime I get them in a plane below 10.0. It's that bad for me. The games are about 20 minutes, they last about 20 minutes anyways for most cases, and I spend about 5 of those minutes actually actively battling and participating against other players. And I think a very significant portion of the community is pretty on board with the idea of these lower tier jets not having to go into these EC maps, especially because it doesn't add anything to the gameplay by being on these smaller maps. I mean, on these larger maps, they play out, at least combat-wise, the exact same as they do on the smaller maps, except it just takes a lot longer for it to happen, and it's quite unnecessary. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I think that pretty much covers that. Most of us are in agreement that the lower tier jets should not be on these sized maps. Where I start to lose a lot of people, though, is on the top tier side, which is understandable. I can absolutely see the want for larger, more realistic feeling jet combat, and that's something that people have been asking for quite a long time. And again, I can completely understand the appeal to that, especially as we're going to move into more modern weapons, and we're going to have missiles where the AIM-7F is going to become quite a standard range for the missiles we're going to see at top tier. Then yeah, an EC map is not a bad idea. However, it has a plethora of problems and really not exactly going in a very good direction for adding newer vehicles, more modern vehicles with more advanced weapon systems in the future. I don't think it's exactly good enough how it is, and to be honest, the way they're going, I don't think it's ever going to be good enough as it is. And again, a lot of the changes that people would want to request, they think they're good ideas, but in practice they're really not going to be, which we're going to address later in the video. But for right now, we're going to talk about top tier jets and why I don't like them, starting with that it just takes too long. And I know there's going to be plenty of people out there that say, boo-hoo, you're just ADD, you got to be constantly doing something, or you're going to do something else, you can stop paying attention. Just one of those ADHD kids that constantly has to be doing something at all times, and that's just not the case. The issue is that I want to be, again, playing the game for longer than I'm not playing the game. And in top tier, when you're still going supersonic, that doesn't change, just like it was in lower tier. It's less of a problem because the jets are moving a little bit faster, but overall, unless everybody comes and furballs into the middle of the map and the battle happens all at once, I'm going to be spending more time flying around doing nothing than I am actually battling people. And if everybody's going to go to the same spot on the map and fight each other all at once, well, what does that sound like to you? It sounds exactly like the maps that we already have in game, the smaller maps, and I think that they work the best currently. Now, they're obviously not perfect, they have their own set of issues as well, but it sure beats out doing absolutely nothing for 20 minutes, maybe not even 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, but either way, that is just too much time for me to be dedicating to my day to try to sit down and play a game and enjoy myself just to not actually end up getting to play the game. But let's say that you actually don't mind doing nothing for that long of a time, and it overall is worth it for you to have better gameplay. Well, what's the better gameplay to you? Because my second point is the spotting system, which we all know and love. It's kind of an infamous mechanic here at top tier especially, and it's just too small. It's too short of a range, and we all know that. The top tier jets are going over supersonic speeds at pretty much all time. Their closure rate is literally a matter of a couple seconds, and yet top tier jets are only getting spotted when they're 4 to 5 kilometers away from you at max. I a lot of times don't spot jets until they're 2 kilometers away if it's something like a sunset map, or even 3 kilometers away. And that's simply just too short. Well, when you're on an EC map, it's even worse. If you're on a normal map, you can at least kind of predict where the enemies are going to be coming from, and so you know where a hostile direction is, and you got to be mindful of, and you know where a friendly direction is, where you don't have to be quite too cautious of. On a EC map, it's kind of a 360-degree hostile zone, and that'd be fine had the spotting system been working properly, and it simply does not. It's already a C key spam fest if you want to live at top tier. If you're not holding C the entire time, then you're probably going to die. And on an EC map, there's almost nothing you can do to stop it, just because every single direction is a possible direction where an enemy's going to come from at any given point. Just because the fact that the map is so big, people have so much room and time to spread out, there's absolutely no telling as to where anybody's going to be coming from. And again, I don't mind that. That's not even a bad idea. That might be a good thing. But that's only a good thing if it's going to have the spotting system to match, and it doesn't. Quick side note, you see me here popping up in Discord, doing all kinds of other things besides playing the game, and I'm just going to leave that in here because, well, this is what EC maps look like. And I just figured I'd keep the gameplay in and everything I'm doing to kind of drive home the point. That being said, there is a very unfortunate portion of the community. I've even seen plenty of them in my comments section, which makes me quite sad, that would advocate for the spotting system to be entirely removed from Air RB as a mechanic, and basically it'd be ground RB or simulator battles to where you have to spot the dots at all times. And some people would even go as far as to say that that takes more skill and that the spotting system is a big crutch. And to those people, well, God help you. And I don't really want to spend too much time explaining as to why that's a complete garbage idea and why the spotting system is significantly more skillful than having solely to rely on visually spotting the dots. But I will just probably save that for another video. That is its own can of worms, and I don't really feel like getting into it. Either way, the spotting system getting removed is not an option to me. Too long didn't read. The spotting system has to be increased, especially so if we're going to be adding new modern jets with modern weapons, as well as the missile spotting range. I'm not just talking about spotting planes. Missiles are only spotted as far as 9 kilometers. That is simply too short. They need to be spotted as soon as they come off the rail for the duration of their motor being burned. But I am more than positive that that is just going to be too much strain on poor War Thunder's spaghetti code to actually be able to do. As far as I know, that's probably going to involve missiles becoming their own rendered entity. I don't know computer terms, so I don't actually know what I'm saying, or if I'm saying that correctly. I'm just saying that the missile needs to become its own physical being in the server in the same way that players are for it to actually work, and that's just not going to happen. Moving on from the spawning system, we have the AI ticket bleed, and really just ticket bleed in general. This is an issue not just on EC maps, it is definitely a big problem from top to bottom all the way throughout War Thunder, in the props and the low tier jets, and not quite so much in the top tier jets on smaller maps. However, when you're talking about top tier jets on the EC maps, it does become an issue. Before I explain why it's an issue, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. When I refer to AI ticket bleed, I'm talking about the PvE ground units, I guess not even PvE, it's just EVE, the ground units attacking themselves and draining one team's tickets based solely on, well, AI and the AI ground battle happening. And yeah, players do have to kind of egg it on a little bit to make it one-sided. You know, one team has to destroy a couple of the ground targets usually in order for their team to get an advantage, but after that, the little advantage they gave their team just by killing one or two AIs has set them up for a win for the rest of the match. All they have to do is hide or camp the airfield or space climb, whatever it may be, and the AI might just win the game for him. And you could combat that with, well, why don't you just go shoot AI and even it out? Well, that's fine, but why does the AI battle each other, drain the tickets in the first place? This is a multiplayer game. It's supposed to be PvP for the most part. I'm pretty sure War Thunder's even labeled as an MMO, as in massive multiplayer online. So the fact that the AI kind of has a deciding factor of a match is a little bit ridiculous to me. I don't think the tickets should drain whatsoever unless the players are making it happen. Say if an attacker is shooting at ground targets, fine, yeah, absolutely. Make that bleed tickets. I understand that people are going to want to have that PvE aspect in War Thunder. And I'm not saying to remove that necessarily, although I would like it. I'm just saying that the AI should not drain tickets by fighting other AI. That doesn't make any sense to me. And while the games usually end quick enough in top tier jets for it to not matter, like I said, in EC it does matter, because on EC there is a problem known as mid-map anti-aircraft. And they come in the form of SPAAs like Shilkas and M247s, I believe. And they are very, very deadly. If you fly low enough to where you're able to actually attack some of these AI ground units, try to balance out the tickets or take an advantage, then you are more than likely going to get swatted out of the air by some random AI mid-map SPAA. They're simply that strong. We have asked over and over again for the mid-map SPAA to not be so strong, and in fact, I'd rather them be borderline useless if not completely removed. And yet, it's kind of a death bubble if you happen to just fly over one on accident. And if you're going to be going for AI ground targets, trying to stop yourself from losing to an AI versus AI battle, well, you're going to die, and you're going to completely fail in your mission and hurt your team even more. So if you are losing to a ticket advantage from the other team, then there's really not always something you can do about it. Of course, there's air-to-air objectives you can go after, but when it comes to air-to-ground, there's absolutely nothing you can do sometimes without risking, and I say risk because it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it is incredibly frustrating to get swatted out of the air by some random AI anti-aircraft when you're simply just trying to win the game for your team, when you're already up a huge advantage anyways. I've lost countless games on top tier EC maps when my team has 6 players left and there's only one guy left on the other team, 2 guys left on the other team. We should, in theory, have won the game. We're clearly the better team. We did better at destroying the other players, but AI ground targets just end the game. We can't find him because he's the last one alive on a 128 square kilometer map. Blind hunts only work up to 32 kilometers, so we couldn't even use a blind hunt on him. And so on and so on. This next one has quite a few parts to it, and I'm just going to say straight up that the EC maps, in my experience, either play differently than the normal maps in a bad way, or they play the exact same as the normal size maps. And I've seen it many times where we're on an EC map and everyone pretty much just stays together, and the furball ends up inevitably happening anyways somewhere in the middle of the map, until maybe 1 to 3 guys are left on either teams, just kind of somewhere random in the map. Either way, at that point they have already done absolutely nothing to help their team for the match, and will inevitably die to the swarm of teammates left on the other team to come and jump them and have a huge numbers advantage over them, and therefore nothing has changed there in a positive way. Or it's the exact opposite, to where everybody is so spread out and so not within reach of each other, to where you're completely randomizing where and how you're going to run into an X number of enemy players. And what I mean by that is that if you don't have the security of having some teammates around you, and a good number of teammates at that, you are completely risking in having the vulnerable option, I guess, for the other team to just completely jump you, either intentionally or on accident, in a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 numbers advantage. And while that may not necessarily decide the game, that is going to decide your game, and that means you are going to die, and there's going to be absolutely nothing you could have done about it. You had no idea you were about to get jumped by 5 different people at once, and you only could have prevented this from happening by staying close to a bunch of your teammates. What does it sound like when you're staying close to a bunch of your teammates? A furball. And that's what everybody complains about on the normal size maps. They hate the furballs. They hate having all of the fighting happening all at one time. Well, I can guarantee you that if an EC map played out in the opposite manner, to where all of the fighting happened at random parts all around the map, you would be just as frustrated, because you'd have absolutely no control over who you died to and how many of them you died to. And with the current mechanics War Thunder has, whether it be team size, whether it be spotting system, or just the missile combat in general, there is no middle ground here. You're either at one end of the extremes, and if you're not experiencing that situation to where you're kind of by yourself, or maybe you're on the other end of that, and maybe you're in a group of teammates and you run into just 1 or 2 enemies, well, that pretty much just proves the point that the EC maps are unfolding in the exact same manner as they do on the smaller maps. The combat is going to be almost entirely the same, unless it happens in that other way, which, as I've already explained, I'm also not a fan of. And if you're gonna have the exact same gameplay, the exact same combat happening, then why the hell do I want a 128 square kilometer map where I'm spending 5 to 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing, and then maybe get 5 minutes, or if I'm lucky, 10 minutes of gameplay out of it? It just doesn't make any sense to me. There is only one aircraft in the entire game that actually benefits from being on an EC map, and that is the F4J, and that's only maybe the F4J, simply because it has the AIM 7F, which, as you've probably had done before yourself, is capable of getting 25 kilometer AIM 7F kills. I've gotten plenty of long range 20 plus kilometer kills with the AIM 7F on the smaller maps as well. You don't need an EC map to be able to do that, but it is a little bit more helpful and a lot easier to do, because, well, you can take off and fly straight and climb and not have to worry about anything, and you'll probably be able to just find somebody and lock onto them. It's just easier. However, this is only a benefit if the target you're shooting at is bad at the game. And I don't want to sound elitist, but if you're still dying to Fox 1 missiles that are getting launched at you from, say, 6 to 8 kilometers far away, then that's just a learn to play issue. There's no two ways about it. There's RWR warnings that literally tell you a missile's coming, as well as the missile markers, and chaff is stronger than ever, and radars and missiles are weaker than ever. There is absolutely no reason to be dying to semi-active radar homing missiles that are being launched outside of 8 kilometers. You have more than enough time to react, at all speeds to be able to turn your ass 90 degrees to wherever that missile is coming from and chaff or notch that radar. With that being said, I will take a 20+ kilometer shot with the AIM-7F just for shits and giggles, but I never expect it to actually kill anybody. If it does, great. I know I just killed a shitter, but if I'm actually gonna try to take the win, I'm gonna conserve my missiles and save them for a closer range missile launch that I know is at the very least not going to leave a whole lot of time for the target to react to. I think I'm just gonna make this video 2 parts because we're already at 20 minutes here, and I highly doubt that anybody's gonna watch longer than that, so I'll probably just save the second part of the video to where if I think of more stuff that I want to talk about with EC maps, I'll put it in there. But the main part of that video is going to be addressing the community quote-unquote fixes to EC maps in ways that people think that they could make them better, that in my opinion are actually just going to make them worse. So I know this has been kind of a bitchy, whiny video. I honestly don't really care that much in the end of the day because War Thunder's not that fun for me anymore either way. However, in my community poll, this is what people said that they wanted to see, so here it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and stay tuned for part 2 in the near future. I'll see ya.